Good morning to all of you. I welcome you all for the morning session class. In the previous session of the operating system, we were discussing module 2, right? So in that we have learned monitors concept, right? So that was the end of your module number 2. So in today's class, I will be discussing the concept of module 3, that is deadlocks. Okay, so let us start the today's session. So before that, I will share the slide to you. Okay, is the slide visible to you? Okay, so in today's session, we will be learning the first chapter concepts on deadlock. Okay, so let us understand what to mean by deadlock first. Okay, so in a multi-programming environment, okay, so multi-programming environment means what? So you can able to run many programs, okay, simultaneously you can run many programs. So in that case, so every program whenever it wants to execute means it needs a resources, correct? So resources ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವುದು? It can be your RAM ಇರ್ಬೋದು, memory space, correct? It can be your CPU, or it can be your input devices. Okay, all these things we call them as resources ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. So any program, if it wants to execute means it has to use these resources for its executions, correct? Okay, now what happens, observe here, in a multi-programming environment. Okay, so several processes will be competing for the resources, okay, because every process need a resource, correct? So in that case, if resources are not available in your computer system, okay, then what happens to the process who wants to execute? So it will obviously move to the waiting state, correct, until and unless it gets the resource. Okay, so it will not able to execute the it will not able to execute it itself. So that's why to execute any program or a process, you have to give the resources to it, anta, correct? So that's why you can observe here, if resources are not available, then what will happens? The process will enter the waiting state, anta. That's what happens. If sometimes resources what is requested, okay, by one process or one program may be used by the other program. In that case, what happens? Unless and until the other program which is holding that resource will not release, so this program will not going to work, anta. Okay, so this situation will results in deadlock, anta artha. So that's what is highlighted in this particular point. Okay, hope you can see. So this is a definition. Okay, if one process holding a request resource, okay, and it is asking for another resource, at the same time the another process requesting for the resource which is held by the previous process, it results in deadlock. anta deadlock ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? No process or a program is executing because they don't have the enough resources available in them to execute. Unless the resources what they are requesting, if they are not available means the process will never execute, anta artha. That's what happens. So they will be kept idle, the programs will be kept idle because they don't have the enough resources, anta. So that is situation, that situation is called as deadlock anta karitare. Okay, so you can see a small diagram I have written here. Okay, so there are two programs, P1 and P2, on the processes we have here, P1 and P2, and R1 and R2 indicates these are the resources, anta. Okay, so there are two programs and there are two resources. Fine, now observe this. You can see the arrow mark symbols here, correct? From P1 to R1, there is an arrow mark, correct? Similarly, from R2 to P1, there is an arrow mark. Let us understand those things first. What does this arrow mark indicates ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, the arrow mark coming from process P1 to R1 ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು, process P1 is requesting the resource R1 ಅಂತ ಅರ್ಥ. Clear with this? Similarly, observe the right part of this diagram. There is an arrow mark from the resource to the process P1. Now, what does this indicates? The process P1 has allocated resource R2 anta. Means process P1 is holding resource R2 and it is requesting which resource? R1 anta artha. So come to the below part of your diagram. So we have process P2 here. You can observe there is an arrow mark from process P2 to R2. What does that indicates? It indicates process P2 is requesting for the resource R2 anta artha. Okay. Next, there is one more arrow mark coming from resource R1 to P2. Now, what does this indicating? This indicates that process P2 has been allocated resource R1 anta artha. That's what that indicates. It means process P2 is holding resource R1, and it is requesting resource R2. Now this situation you can observe, right? So there is a circle formation, what you can able to see, correct? Inside this diagram there is a circle formation. So it means that no process is executing here, because the resource what they are requesting is held by the another process. Until the another process gives the resource, it will not execute. That process will not execute. Like that, both processes are idle here. They are not at all executing. They are simply sending the requests for resources. Now this situation is called as deadlock anta kariti. Okay, hope I am clear to all of you the definition. Is it clear to all of you? So this is what a deadlock indicates. Okay, where every process is requesting for a resource and they are waiting and they are not at all executing. It results in a deadlock situation anta. Okay, right. Next, system model. So your deadlock system model. So how it does it actually looks antandre. So we have a finite number of resources. We don't tell computer system as infinite resources. It will be containing some countable number of resources. Okay, that is what the first point we are saying here. So what are some of the examples of resources we have highlighted here? The resources can be your memory and the RAM. Okay, it can be your CPU, correct, and it can be your input devices and so on. So ಇವೆಲ್ಲದ ನಾವು ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? ರಿಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಓಕೆ, ರೈಟ್. ಈಚ್ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಸಮ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸಸ್. ನಾವು ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಓಕೆ, ಹೌ ಮೆನಿ ನಂಬರ್ ಆಫ್ ದೋಸ್ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ ಅವೈಲಬಲ್ ಅಂತ ಅರ್ಥ. ರಿಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಟೈಪ್. ಈಗ ಮೆಮೊರಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಒಂದು ರಿಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಟೈಪ್. ಓಕೆ, ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಯು ಸಿ ಹಿಯರ್? ಮೆಮೊರಿ is one resource type. Similarly, CPU is another resource type. Next, input output device, it is another resource type. ಇವನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ resource types ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Okay, so ಈಗ memory space. Next, how many RAM you have, that is what memory space indicates. Similarly, CPU, how many CPU or processors you are having in your computer system. Next, input output devices, how many input output devices are there in your computer system. Okay, that is ಇವನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವೇನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? ಇನ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. So that's what it is written in the second point. So each resource has some instance of it ಅಂತ. So example ನಾವೇನ್ ತಗೊಂಡಿದೀವಿ? If a computer system has 2 CPUs, ಅವಾಗ ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಯಾವ ತರ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಮಾಡೆಲ್ ಒಳಗೆ? We say that the computer system has 2 instances of CPU ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಈಗ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಡಿವೈಸ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, we have 3 printers connected to our computer system. So what will it we tell now? For our computer system we have 3 printers connected. Then how many instances are there for our computer system? Can anybody tell? You can unmute yourself and tell. 3, correct. Okay, so we can say our computer system has 3 instances of printer anta baritivi. So that's how that is what the meaning of instance indicates. Okay, how many of such resource types you have in your computer anta adana ನಾವು instances anta ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Right. Next, observe the third point. In my third, what does third point says andre, any process who wants to execute means it has to first request a resource before it start or it begins its execution. It must request a resource. Okay, if CPU program execute ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು? First thing is what you need a memory, and next thing you need a CPU. At least these are the minimum requirements I am saying, resources. Okay, if these you are having, then your program is executing anta artha. Correct? So process, it will request the resource first before it starts its execution. Similarly, the process will release its resource. Okay, ಅಂದ್ರೆ CPU na release ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ because it has completed its execution. So or it will release the memory because it has completed its execution. So that's what the third point says. Any program which you want to execute, it will first request a resource. Okay, and after completion it will release the resource. That's what it says. Okay, right. Next, and one more thing. So in our system, no program or a process, okay, will request for a resource, okay, which exceeds the limit. If for example we have some 2 CPUs in our computer system, okay, so any program which wants to execute means it cannot ask 3 CPUs for its execution, because what is the maximum limit of your CPUs? Only 2. Correct? So that's what the fourth point says. The number of resources what any program is requesting, so it will not exceed the total number of resources which are available in it, in our computer system anta. So if we have 2 CPUs available in our computer system antandre, the program cannot ask more than 2 CPUs. Correct? Because there are not more than 2 CPUs available, so you cannot ask. So that's what that fourth point indicates anta. Okay, resources requested must not exceed the total number of available resources. Okay, right. Next. Okay, so in what order the process will be using the resources anta? In this particular order, the process will be executing or using the resources. The first one is the process, it will request for a resource. Okay, if the requested resource is not available, then what happens? That process will be in a queue, waiting queue alli irutte. Whenever the resource becomes available, the program will start its execution. That's what that request indicates. First it will request for a resource. Soon after that, what happens? It will use the resource, means the whatever resource it has requested, it will be allotted to that program and it will be using that. That is what the use indicates. So last one is, after the usage of the resource, the program will release the resource. That's what the third thing. So this is the order in which the process will utilize the resources: request, use, and finally it is release. Okay, clear with this? Right. So that's what a general concept behind the deadlock system model. Okay, right. Next. So this is one important question, okay, in your deadlock. So they will ask, what are the necessary conditions for a deadlock to occur in your computer system ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಒಂದು ಡೆಡ್ಲಾಕ್ ಸಿಚುವೇಶನ್ ಅಕ್ಕರ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಯು ನೀಡ್, ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ಸ್ ನೀಡ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಸ್ಯಾಟಿಸ್ಫೈಡ್. ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸೇ our system is under deadlock anta ಹೇಳಕ್ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಅಂತ. So these are the 4 conditions. So the first one is mutual exclusion. So what does mutual exclusion means? What anybody can unmute and tell what to mean by mutual exclusion?
Only one process can enter the critical section at a time.
Yes, right. So we have learned this in your synchronizations concept alwa. So we have a one critical section. So to that critical section, only one program is allowed to execute anta, correct? So uh, to make your computer system moves to a deadlock state ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? Okay, so at least one resource should be in non-shareable mode ಅಂತ. Non-shareable ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? The resource which cannot be used by multiple processes or multiple programs. Shareable resource ಅಂತಂದ್ರೇನು? The resource can be used by multiple processes or programs at a same time. ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು shareable resource ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Okay, ಈಗ what we have to create now? We have to create a deadlock situation. How do we create a deadlock situation? By making one resource as non-shareable. Non-shareable ಅಂತ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಏನು? Only one program is allowed to use the resource. Okay, so when one program is using the resource means other has to do what? Other program has to wait. Okay, so it means unless the program one release, the program two has to wait. So that's means we are creating a one situation called a deadlock. Okay, so by using your mutual exclusion property, we can create a deadlock situation anta artha. Okay, so this is the first condition for deadlock occurrence in our computer system. Okay, next. So this is very important. You have to understand non-shareable resource. Okay, if the resource is in non-shareable mode means only one program is allowed to execute. So that's what a mutual exclusion indicates, correct? Next. So second condition means is hold and wait. Hold and wait ಅಂತಂದ್ರೇನು? A process or a program is holding one resource. Okay, and it is requesting for the another resource, or it is waiting for another resource or additional resource. So that is called as hold and wait. So this in this condition also you can see that your system is under deadlock. It is holding one request and it is requesting another it is holding one resource and it is requesting another resource. Okay, so this will also results in what? Deadlock occurrence. Okay, next. Third one, no preemption. So no preemption means what? Anybody can unmute and tell what to mean by preemption? What to mean by preemption? So you have learned this in scheduling algorithms alva. What is preemption?
Forcefully removing CPU.
Yeah, right. So preemption means forcefully removing the CPU from the process anta. Okay, so instead of CPU, I will call them as resources. Okay, because I am talking here deadlock concept. Okay, preemption means forcefully removing the resource. The resource can be anything. It can be CPU, it can be memory, or it can be input devices. Okay, so if you are forcefully removing the resource from one program and giving it to another program means the chances of deadlock occurrence will be nil. Deadlock will never occur, correct? So what you have to show? You have to show the deadlock getting occurred in your computer system. ಅವಾಗ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ನೀವು? So you should not make the resource to be preempted. Okay, so the process has to release the resource voluntarily. So that's why the third point indicates no preemption. Andre resources cannot be preempted, so they have to be released voluntarily by the program. So this also results in what? Deadlock. Okay, that is the third condition for deadlock occurrence in your computer system. And the last one, circular wait. So here we have taken some n processes here, or n programs starting from P0, P1, P2, so and so. Okay, in which, so the process P0 is waiting for one resource which is held by process P1. Okay, that's what we have written here. P0 is waiting for the resource which is held by P1 anta. Similarly, P1 is waiting for the resource held by P2, etc., etc., etc. Similarly, last one, Pn is waiting for the resource which is held by P naught. So like that, so every process is requesting for a resource which is held by the another process. So like that, it will be in the form of a circle. The waiting happens. The waiting of every processes will be in a circular fashion. You can see this diagram. Can you see here? So this is a diagram. So P1 is waiting for one request, but it is held by another process. Similarly, P2 is requesting one resource, but it is held by another process. So it is like a circular fashion. The processes are being waiting. Okay. So it results in what? Deadlock. So what are the necessary conditions now? So all the four conditions has to be satisfied. Okay. All conditions occur agಬೇಕು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಒಳಗೆ. Mutual exclusion, hold and wait, no preemption, and circular wait. If all the four conditions occur in your computer system, then your computer system is under a deadlock situation ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. So this is one very important question. So they will going to ask, so what are all the, or explain the necessary conditions for a deadlock to occur in your computer system anta kelbodu. Okay, so these are the four conditions you have to write and you have to explain. Okay, so am I clear with this concept? Right. So that's what deadlock conditions are all about. Right. Okay, so that's what one general introduction which I want to give it to you in today's session on deadlocks. So in tomorrow's class, we will try to discuss few more concepts related to your deadlocks. Okay, the next remaining session, I will be just giving some brief overview on the second module, what we have learned in the second module so far. So chapter 2 we have learned, correct, that is synchronizations, and chapter 1 we have learned, that is your which one it is, scheduling algorithms concept. So I will just try to brief them what all the things we have learned in the module 2. Okay, so let's end it the today's third module session. I will just share that second module concept to you. Right. So hope this is visible to you. I will just quickly move on to the scheduling algorithms concept. Just a moment. Okay, so I'll just brief out what are all the algorithms we have learned so far in your scheduling algorithms. Okay. Let's move to this one first. Process scheduling. Okay, so process scheduling means what? Allocating the time for the programs to execute by the CPU. Okay, at what time CPU will be taking up the programs for execution, that is called as scheduling anta karitivi, correct? Okay, so normally whenever any program is getting executed means, so how do you normally calculate the program execution time antandre? So whenever CPU is allotted to the program means, it will take some time for execution. Afterwards, if certain resource it is requesting that program means, it will wait until the resources are allotted to it. Okay, so that particular time CPU is not waiting that particular program. So the total program execution time involves the waiting time as well as the execution time. That entire time, the sum of two times, waiting time and execution time, will give you the actual program execution time anta. That's what this diagram is trying to say. And we have learned different kinds of schedulings, right? One is non-preemptive scheduling and preemptive scheduling anta nodidvi alva. So non-preemptive scheduling alli enagutte, so we have one CPU which is allotted to one program. So until the program release the CPU voluntarily, no other programs will be get executed. Okay, so that's what non-preemptive. So in preemptive scheduling, what happens? So CPU who can be forcefully removed from one program and it will be given to the another program. That is called as preemptive schedulings. So most of our scheduling algorithms comes in these two flavors, non-preemptive and preemptive flavors. Okay, right. And we have learned about the dispatcher. Dispatcher job is what? Giving the control of a CPU to one program. That is called dispatcher. Okay, right. And we have learned the concepts of scheduling criteria. These are the different scheduling criteria we can see: CPU utilization, throughput, turnaround time, waiting time, and response time. So if they ask what are all the scheduling criteria, so these are the 5 things you have to write and give brief explanation to all these things. Fine. Okay, scheduling algorithms. So the first scheduling algorithm is first come first served scheduling algorithm. So here there will be a ready queue which is maintained. So every time a process enters the ready queue, the CPU is given to that particular process. So in which order they will come, in that same order the CPU will be given to each and every process. So that's why the name given first come first served. Okay, so the which process has requested the CPU first, so only that process will get the CPU first. That's what that indicates. Okay, right. So we have learned a few problems. I will just brief out this. So this is one problem where we have given the order of processes which are arriving. So in this order they have arrived: P1, P2, P3, correct? And these are all the burst times. Okay, so we all know how we have calculated these waiting times and turnaround times, correct? So waiting time, how do you calculate? So you have to write the Gantt chart. Okay, and the leftmost time in your Gantt chart for that particular process is called the waiting time. So process P1 waiting time is 0 because it is a leftmost value, right? So it means that process P1 has not waited anta. Whenever it has arrived, it has got the CPU anta artha. Similarly, process P2. So the leftmost time is how much? It is 24. Andre after 24th minute, process P2 will get the CPU anta. So 24 milliseconds it has waited anta. So that is a waiting time. Similarly, process P3. So its leftmost time is 27. So that is the amount of time the process P3 has waited anta artha, correct? So your turnaround time is the sum of waiting time plus the burst times. So waiting time 0, burst time 24, 0 plus 24 is 24. So that's how you are calculating the turnaround times. Okay, so that's what we have solved like that many problems. Next algorithm was the shortest job first. And shortest job first, how we are giving the CPU the process which is having the smallest burst time. So that process will be getting the CPU anta. So you can observe here, these are all the burst times. In that process P4 is having the small CPU time here. So that process will be getting the CPU. So that's why it is called as shortest job first. So the one more name for this algorithm is shortest next CPU burst time antanu kariತೀವಿ, right? So in this algorithm you can have different flavors. One is preemptive shortest job first anta barutte, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು non preemptive shortest job first anta barutte. Okay, so we have solved those problems also. So you can see CPU is removed from the current process and the CPU is given to the next process only when the new arrived process burst time is smaller than the current running process. Adana ನಾವು preemptive SJF ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. So it is also called by the another name shortest remaining time first ಅಂತಾನು ಕರಿತೀವಿ. And another flavor is non-preemptive shortest job first. Non-preemptive ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ CPU is not removed from the process, current process, even though new process is arrived whose burst time is small. Okay, we are not removing the CPU from the current running process. So it is called as non-preemptive SJF. So based on that also we have solved few problems. You can observe here. So in this kind of problems, the arrival times are given. So whenever arrival time are given, your waiting time is calculated by using the formula Gantt chart time minus arrival time anta. Okay, so you can observe here the process P1. How do you calculate the waiting time? Usually it is the leftmost time in the Gantt chart. So leftmost time in the Gantt chart for P1 is 0. But since they have given the arrival time, so we should also consider the arrival time. So what is arrival time for P1? It is also 0. So that's why we have written 0 minus 0 is equal to 0. So that's how we are calculating the waiting times in our problem whenever the arrival time is given anta artha. So is it clear? Right. So the next is your priority scheduling, where every process is given some priority number. Based on that priority, the CPU will be keep on executing on that. Okay. So last one is round robin scheduling. So in round robin scheduling, what happens? Every process will be executing for a certain period of time. So that is called as time quantum. Okay. So these are the few briefings which I want to make on your scheduling algorithms. So please try to refer all these things